Okay, and welcome back to BME 2315. In today's section, we'll be continuing our discovery of MATLAB and how it can be used to do programming. So in the previous lecture, we went over the MATLAB desktop, looked at how to define variables, use matrices, and how to use the basic programming control structures in MATLAB. What we didn't do is look at how to make functions, and so that'll be the main focus of this lecture. We're going to be looking at how to make functions, so you can remember these are sort of isolated components of code that can call one another, and so functions are really helpful for building more complex codes. And we're going to look at how you make them, and also how you use the MATLAB debugging tools, much like you did in Spider. There are debugging tools in MATLAB to help you figure out what is going wrong inside your functions, and as additional topics, we'll be looking at different types of functions, local functions and anonymous functions, and the debugging walkthrough, and also looking at a really nice web page that is developed by MATLAB called MATLAB Grader. And MATLAB Grader basically is a website where you can upload your codes and have them run against tests, just like the unit test that you did with Python. And so that's how we're going to be submitting our MATLAB codes. So those are each of the topics that we're going to be talking about today. So the first thing I want to do is just tell a little bit about functions and how functions are defined in MATLAB. So basically, this is a function file where it's just only functions. We don't have any script-like components in this. And a few things are a little bit different. The special keyword is function, and then you name the function and then have input arguments. Those are the parameters that go into your function. But notice here, instead of having a return at the end, we're defining our output variables up here. So this is the output variable equals function name and then input arguments. You can also have more than one output variable if you encase them in brackets. So that's the basic idea of a main function. You can also have local functions, like these are two local functions that can get called within this file myfunction.m. However, it can't get called from another file. So only this my function can get called from another file. There's another type of function called an anonymous function, which is a little more complicated than it needs to be. Really, this is the same thing as when we had our one-line function definitions in Python. So what we're doing here is kind of confusing because it doesn't say function, but the S is the name of the function, and this @ and then X is indicating the input argument variables, and then this is the one line of code here. So that's called an anonymous function. So sometimes those will be useful to you, but they're a little bit confusing when you get started. Okay, so now we're going to, this is just a text overview of how to do debugging, but we're going to walk through that kind of one by one directly in MATLAB. So let me get over to MATLAB. Okay, and we have a function defined here called add two numbers. The output argument is z, and the input arguments of x and y. Okay, and so now if we run add two numbers, so we say z equals add two numbers 1 and 2. It ran, but it gave a very strange result. It gave us a result of 6. Okay, so something's wrong with that. And so in order to figure out it's kind of easy to see what's wrong with that here, but when you're debugging a more complicated, something more complicated, that's not so easy. And so what you can do is you can make a breakpoint, as I do right here. Okay, and then we can run it again, And so we can see that we've stopped right here, that x and y have been defined. We can see them in the workspace, the values of 1 and 2. And then we can hit the step button to show that z was 3, so that it was fine, and then it got messed up on the next step. Okay, and at that point you can hit quit debugging. So that is a way of, just like we've done in Spider, kind of stepping through one by one each of the individual elements. Let's now go back to let's go to another file that is a unit test file for add to numbers. So we're going to use unit test just like we did in Python. And again, we can make do debugging within the unit test files. So for example, if I go to this and then I'm going to run the section. Okay, so it's because of this breakpoint, it's stuck at y equals 2. So it's got x is 1, and I'm going to hit step. Okay, so now y is 2. And then now I'm going to go step in to step into the add to numbers file. And so then, yeah, see, it took me to the add to numbers. And so I can see that x and y are still correct, they're 1 and 2. You get step. You can see that z was 3, which is correct. And then now z is 6, which is not correct. And then I can hit step and step out. Okay. And then I step here, and then we're going to get an assertion error. Yeah, this assertion error is because it didn't satisfy z equal to 3 as it should have. Okay. So if we wanted to fix this, obviously all we need to do is set it equal to get rid of this line right here. But I'm gonna not do that right now, for just so that it's more clear where there are problems. Okay, so that's a real quick example of MATLAB debugger, and let me show a little bit more about these test suites. So if we go, let me let's see. I'll start right here, and I'm going to run each of these sections. And we see that, oh, actually, I want to quit debugging first. I'm going to quit debugging, go back to the test suite, remove this. And so if I run each section one at a time, we see that, didn't want that. I don't want to be debugging. Okay, let's try this again. We run in advance. You see that the assertion failed on line 5. And this assertion failed. There's another test. And then line 19. This is line 19 failed. Okay, so basically we have several assertions failing. And if you fix this, such as commenting out this line, then the assertions are going to pass now. Yeah, and it just doesn't say anything. Okay, so that shows how to make them pass. But let me go put that back. It's useful for our exercises. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is show you about MATLAB Grader. So MATLAB Grader is a way of a website where you can upload codes, and then it evaluates all the test suites are kind of built in, and so then it automatically shows you whether you pass the test suites or not. So this right here is this one is called add to numbers, just like the one that we just had, and it says has this what we know is a broken code right here, and then if you scroll down, it has the pre-tests, which are the test suites that it shows you, that it'll show you, so you can kind of see what's working, what's happening or not, and you can see that this is obviously correct, and that this one is also correct, just coded a different way. But it's not going to show you test 3 and test 4. That it's going to keep those ones hidden. So if we, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run the pretest, to run these pretests, and it's going to tell me that the assertion failed. So I know that something is wrong in my code. So what I can do now is get rid of that, and I run my pretest, and they pass. So that's good. It's nice to get green check marks. And I can run them now on the rest of the tests, and it's running on all of the tests pass. And so that would be a really good sign. So I'm just going to put that back wrong so that it's useful as an exercise. Okay, so that's the basic idea of what happens with MATLAB Grader, is that you'll have a variety of different exercises, and that you want to develop your code in MATLAB and make sure that it's working there. But once you do, you copy and paste your code into this website and run the test against it to see how it's doing. Okay, so as the last little exercise, I wanted to spend a little bit of time doing plotting in MATLAB, and we're going to check various different things. So close that. MATLAB's going a little bit slow. Okay, so this file called plotting tests. Okay, so the very first one is just a simple plot. We're going to have a t-vector, and we've got x is sine, y is cosine, and then we're going to plot x and y together. So we're going to run that little cell right here, and you see a nice clean little plot right there. And you could add things to it, of course. So in fancy plot, we're going to add some things to it. So one is we're going to use different types of symbols, and we're going to use an X label and a Y label, and with a legend and a title. Okay, and run that section in advance. Okay, so see it's kind of a fancier plot, and has more elements that you might want to use to label your data, things like that. Okay, so the next one is what happens when you want to just stack multiple figures, and so that uses a subplot command. I can run that, and so now this separates them. So in the subplot, let me kind of show you the coding is 2, 1, 1. So that means that it's going to be 2 vertically by 1 horizontally, and you're talking about plot 1, or 2, and then the same grid, but you're talking about the second plot. And so that's what makes you be able to kind of have 2 separate subplots like that. This is some code if you want to make 3D surface plots. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about this, but they're pretty neat looking. Here it goes. So you use the hand tool. I'm not quite sure why it put it in the subplot. Yeah, and if you rotate around, you can see different features of these service plots. Pretty neat. Okay, so those are all the plots that I had to show you today. So to kind of summarize, what we talked about is different types of defining functions in MATLAB, and then we talked about how important these unit tests are, not just in Python but also in MATLAB. And this MATLAB grader is a software website developed by MathWorks, the company that makes MATLAB, to allow you to upload your code and then run it against sets of pre-specified unit tests. And so that I really like that. It kind of establishes a best practice of not just making code, but always having tests that make sure that your code is running correctly. And then we talked about, or at least gave you a few examples of how to make different plots in MATLAB. So I hope that was useful to you, and I hope to see you next time.